Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. It's me, Vinod. Happy Friday. Looking forward to the weekend. Even I am looking forward to the weekend. Our friend Rupesh is getting married. By the time you guys see the video, he would be married. So that is a great news for our team. We congratulate Rupesh and we wish him the best from all of us in his new adventures in life as he gets on to another phase in life. Those of you who are married like me would know what that phase entitles. So we wish him the best of luck and lots of love. Anyway, getting back to the video today. Since I had to record this a little early, thanks to the attending his reception and wedding, I did not have the time to look at the comments and come back to you with my feedback and thoughts on that, which I will try and do on the Saturday video, what my thoughts and comments are. But today's topic is about dollar and something we've all been wondering. With all that's going on, with all this confidence in the market, no matter what happens, the economic conditions, the tariff wars, Iran-Israel conflict, the Russian conflict, and whatever is happening with China and the US in trade, the market seems to be holding rather steady through it all and doesn't seem to be shaken by anything at all. I thought I'll discuss why this is so and why you may not see anything happening too seismic as of now. Of course, I mean as of now, because like I said in the previous video, what sends Mr. Market into a frenzy can be anything, something totally inconsequential can lead to this, but as of now it seems to be holding steady. And all of this is behind the US dollar. And what is the strange attraction to the US dollar? A lot of you are left wondering, why can't another currency just replace this? Why is it like this? So I thought I'll deep dive into this and explain to you why it's not so simple to get rid of the dollar. And the Americans know this, and especially Donald Trump knows this. First, before we get into why the dollar cannot be shaken, we must first understand what is money. Why do we have this thing called money? If we trace back human history, so we first want to understand what is money. Why do we have this concept called money happening? Well, money evolved out of a need. Money was what created language and communication. Some of the first tablets which we discovered in Sumerian, in what is now Iraq, the first few tablets which we found which had inscriptions written on it, which our language system is based on, was none other than accounts of what is owed to one another. So if Arun borrowed something from me, I would mark it down in a tablet so I won't forget. If I owed him something, so many bales of rice or canisters of beer, I would write it down. So Arun knows and I know that it's recorded. That's how all of this started, this whole fascination with human civilization and what we have modern cities. It all comes basically down in keeping accounts or ledger, as they say. So that's where money comes from. And from first writing, then it slowly turned into some kind of commodity which we used. We started having shells. From shells, we went into stones and beads and jewelry. Then we finally landed up with gold. Because why did we stick with gold? Because gold is very hard to create. It doesn't get ruined like other metals. It doesn't rust. It doesn't get bad. And there's very limited quantity of it, so it's easy to quantify it. And all this slowly over a long period of time in evolution, gold became the principal form of storing this ledger information. What is owed to me, what is owed to you, all that was baked into gold. Of course, silver was there, and slowly this transferred into money which was backed by gold, because people were stealing gold from when you're transporting it from one place to another. To prevent theft, they started writing it down on a piece of paper, and that piece of paper finally turned into as currency. Okay, that is a brief synopsis of how we got to money. What is reserve currency? Well, let's talk about the previous reserve currency, which is the sterling pound, the Great British pound. The British pound was built on the British Empire. The British Empire spanned over 200 years to 250, 300 years, first in Europe, then all over the world, into Asia, and into, believe it or not, even the whole continent of United States was a British Empire, part of the British Empire, for those of you who don't know. All that was built on the back of trade, which is again commodity, which was based on money, which is basically ledger and accounts, which the British pound was doing. So the British were printing this currency, creating the sterling pound backed by the sovereign, and everyone was using that, and trust was there in the British pound. Then a couple of things happened, and the Brentwood Agreement happened, and the British pound was kicked out of the reserve currency status and stepped in the American dollar. Of course, towards the end of the video, I'll explain in detail what happened to the British pound to lose this crown. So then you can understand what could happen to the dollar. But before we get to that, let's first see what is the dollar. So the Americans came and sat in, and they said, we are the new sheriffs in town, and the dollar will be the reserve currency, and the rest of the world couldn't do much with it because they did help win the World War. They defeated fascism, they defeated Hitler, and we said, okay, democracy is the way to go, freedom of speech is the way to go, and the American principles are what we should follow. Of course, all this American dollar was backed by physical gold and the trust in the American government and the might of the American military and economy, or as the president said at the time, the military industrial complex, how all of that fitted together, creating this complex narrative which we have now, which is the trust in the dollar. So we did have hyperinflation in the past. Germany went through hyperinflation in 1923. Zimbabwe in the 2000s, Venezuela went through hyperinflation. So why isn't America going through hyperinflation? A lot of you wonder. What is this US paradox? Because just if we rewind the clock back to April 2020, the Americans printed $3 trillion in just 1 month and pumped it into the world economy. And their debt stands now at $36 trillion, which is more than the GDP of India, China, Russia, UK, Japan combined, not independently, combined. You take 5 nations, big economies, and you combine their and their debt stands higher than that. And yet there's no hyperinflation, there's no chaos. Markets are booming, like I said. So how does this happen? Well, the Fed creates money out of thin air, and what do they do with that money? They go buy US government bonds from commercial banks, infusing this cash into the banks. The banks then take this money, which they get from the Fed by selling the bonds, and then they in turn lend it to people and businesses who borrow it and they spend it, and that spending creates jobs, and those jobs create more spending, and so the cycle goes on, and the American government keeps collecting taxes. So they created this sophisticated system of printing money, and it's been working great. So why doesn't it break if we are suddenly creating all this debt? Well, it's basically one thing: global trust on the American dollar. 2008, when the financial crisis happened, investors dumped all assets and ran to the American bonds, the T-bills, the American dollar. 2020, the United States printed, like I said, so much of dollars, $3 trillion in a month, but the global demand for dollars was up. It didn't crash. 2022, Russia and Ukraine war broke out. The demand for US bonds went up. This did not happen for Germany. This did not happen for Zimbabwe. No one else had this in the past except the UK, who lost it. So America is not powerful because it has nuclear weapons or it has the world's best army or the economy. America is powerful because the trust behind the country and the dollar, basically the dollar. And that trust is what is making America the most powerful country right now. And Trump knows this, and he's flexing it. Is it good to flex it? That I leave it up to you. Before I leave it up to you, let me give you some thoughts to ponder on how the UK lost it, like I said. The UK did not lose the sterling crown overnight. Overnight, people didn't stop using British pound, saying, no, we don't trust it. It happened over 40 years. 2 world wars, decline of domestic industries in the UK, right? From a credit nation, they became a high public debt nation. Then the Brentwood, of course, happened, but that was the start of a slow global loss of face for the UK. One of the final nails in UK's public confidence was the Suez Canal crisis in 1956, when UK, France and Israel got together and sent in their armies to kick Egypt out, trying to grab the Suez Canal. And believe it or not, the US was against it. They condemned it, and they exerted financial pressure on the UK, which led to a run on the British pound. The world suddenly said, oh my God, if America themselves are not supporting UK, then what are we holding the stupid British pound for? We don't even know if it's worth anything anymore. This forced the UK to withdraw, and this led to complete loss of face for the UK, and this lost any power it had in its pound and the trust it had. So now imagine where we stand. I told you it was a process of 40 years and multiple things mismanaged by them and the bravado which they did, which led to finally them losing this. Now we have Trump sitting where he is, and you have seen what's been happening over the last 6 months and the bond vigilantes which you've been talking about, and the rest I leave it to your imagination from here. So you've all been asking me what will take for US to lose the reserve status as a global currency. So here I leave it to you to ponder on this from here on. It is not easy to replace it because the trust the Americans have built in the dollar is baked into it. I don't see any other currency or country currently holding that kind of public trust, global trust, for it to come and replace. And that is one of the reasons why, no matter what Trump is doing, all his jingo-jangoisms, people still cannot afford to lose the trust in the American dollar, because if you lose the trust in that, then what are you left with? How are we going to communicate our ledgers with each other? How am I going to know what Arun owes me or what I owe Arun? Of course, a lot of people are saying crypto will replace that. I don't know. I have my doubts in crypto to start with. I don't have a problem with blockchain. Blockchain is a great technology. I'm not talking about blockchain. I'm talking about the rest of it. Anyway, food for thought. I would love your comments and your feedback. Since I've given the clickbait word of crypto, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of crypto bots coming and talking nonsense below. Try and filter it out. Don't get swayed by all that. Let me know your thoughts and comments and your questions, and I'll try and answer all of them in the next video as I combine the Q&A from the last video and this video into the next video. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Like I said, congratulations, Rupesh. Wishing you a happy married life from all of us from Be Rich and the extended fraternity. Nothing else more to say other than have a great evening. See you tomorrow. Bye.